Hello everyone on the frame January 22nd Friday. Everyone is happy to see on your channel about money market. Subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, don't forget. Put the bell in order not to miss new videos. According to tradition, we'll discuss the current situation. To sum up briefly the result, view currency, a few dollar hospitals, and discuss on my look some interesting news which affects those same market. Will begin Moscow exchange traded and vengeance here on this moment. While writing this video, ruble US falls to nearly 0.9%, trading at 74 rubles 48 kopecks for a dollar. Brent adjusted almost 1.5% rate of $55.26 per barrel. No index. Moscow exchange is also adjusted on 1.4% at the level of traded index 3,375 points. That is correction. Of course, it takes into account all future and current risks. Let's literally them a little bit and let's talk. Friends, start with the fact that the oil we have adjusted in general according to the assumptions on which we are informed. Said of course now risks again increases are not related to the pandemic course. Stop economy now very much. Information coming in from China and China. After all, China is still the largest. The economy of peace in this country only showed economic growth at the 20th. There again, there is worrying news about sick about the amount. Sick, it is growing, but what? For the currency pair dollar ruble. Not a drop in the ruble against the dollar. Again in correlation with oil at once in the second, I suppose. Investors are still trying to hedge risks which can then have to occur because those upcoming events which scheduled for January 23rd, literally tomorrow, I mean about the opposite. Protests. Announced fund park against corruption as Fanta Alexei Navalny. So in this sense too, there is certain risks for the financial market. But of course there are risks, so the sanctions of nature here. Let's hear literally this stop a little more. Let's start with the fact that Janet Yellen and taboo, even the head of the US Treasury, or as another name of the Ministry of Finance, the US told Congress that literally recently about what it in the post for the future. The Minister of Finance will follow tough sanctions against Russia, Russian players over the Crimea and other threats. What's more here, she said, will reconsider the sanctions regime, and to do so, them to be used strategically and properly. That's what she meant by this phrase, strategic. Do that way, at least I perceive, so that these sanctions are already in force against Russia, against some companies, may be branches, against specific individuals or officials, but these sanctions, of course, it will be reviewed to consider their effectiveness, and if they are in the opinion of the future head of the Ministry of Finance will be ineffective, it will naturally be some rethink, rebuild. Goes so still, they had some. The importance and influence on Nathan is against what usual actually say these sanctions. That's about, I think that in this, it is the promise we now look. Another tweet, reporter media, the American media where it's this. The news was published in general where this information went, but going to watch this monitor mode. There is another interesting thing. The statement concerns the fact that chief currency strategist at Saxo Bank and John Hardy again here says, quote, that the strengthening of sanctions in the canoe, not more likely than Trump, and sanctions against Russia from the USA is a real danger for ruble. Here is a warning, of course. Also, she told me on the empty seat made the is, in fact, that's the kind of news which we have just discussed about Janet Yellen and that concern currency strategist from Saxo Bank and are related. So in this sense we ought to is to pay attention, and naturally these all the news, of course. Currency pair dollar the ruble is but, if so figuratively speaking, at the start to what is called in this sense. We also of course need to follow very carefully this situation, and in order to make more to say so clearly, let us now proceed to monitor mode and continue it already, looking specifically for an exchange pair dollar ruble and oil. Go. So let's get on with our work now. In front of your eyes, the Twitter account of Selena Maxine is a Bloomberg correspondent in general. How? That's exactly what she did on your Twitter account. That recording about Janet Yellen, which we Only you spoke and this is. Records. Media including. Russian. But mostly Russian and. Did in fact this. Information about the transfer 3 is here. Written 8 in the written replies to. Senators' questions answered that I. Commit. To comply strictly with sanctions against. Russian regions. For territorial aggression in eastern. Ukraine and Crimea but also other threats. National security but in the first place. Again we have the question of Crimea. And secondly the national security threat too. National security of course. We are most likely talking about those cyber attacks. That were here at the end of last year in the United States. You do know that these attacks in. Responsible USA lays it on. Russia but in general, here such information and. Here, for example the prime, that is, too. Information about Janet Ellen then she. Also this is all in fact Perez. Retold. And here it is clear that I will still. About to implement sanctions in short. Having said all of that what is supplied to. The fact that this anti-Russian rhetoric. It is already beginning but probably the. Dollar-ruble currency pair is also. Reacting to this kind of. Statement news so well let's look at the oil let's look. At the Brent oil we have a correction going on for. Now while we are talking the. Correction is already $55.30 on Brent oil. But here this is certainly a movement it at least so far looks like a bearish one at least I can see here. That the mood is more pessimistic.